uh, graduate from the multimedia journalism school at Oklahoma State, pursuing a second degree in Spanish. Um, she has, studied abroad. Uh, she has been a leader on campus. She has been the editor of the Ocali. John Helsley can't brag. I think he loses, uh, track of words. He can't even come up with words when he wants to describe Kayla and her contributions there at the Ocali. She's been involved in campus leadership with the SGA, President's Leadership Council. Uh, this is a young lady she's got a longer resume than I do, and I'm about three times her age. So, but very outstanding. And I know her dad and mom both. Uh, there's no shortage of pride when you talk to them about both their daughters, but certainly about Kayla, the oldest daughter. And Kayla Dunn joins us now. Kayla, how are you? Good morning.
I'm doing so well. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing very good. The other thing is, we've met a couple of times, never
Mhm.
sat down and had long conversations, but I know this because you and my daughter both at different times, Katie, I think just before you, have been in the same sorority. And you know, Katie, I'm proud of all her accomplishments. She's in law
Mhm.
school now at UH in Houston. Um, so she keeps
Yeah.
up, and this was a compliment. She thought they a couple of years ago she was talking to somebody at the Theta House, and they said, "Yeah, we've got, the next Katie has come around, and it's Kayla Dunn." Because
I'm so honored.
you guys were, yeah, you were out doing a lot of the same things uh, on campus. Let's
Well,
get
thank
right
you.
to this. And I said
Mhm.
this earlier. I'm a 59-year-old white male. Um,
Mhm.
Not a lot of people want to hear me yap about social issues such as the death of George Floyd and how it happened, why things like that have continued to happen. Um, you represent the future. You're a young leader that's gonna have an impact on this country and state and community for a long time. And that showed Sunday. Tell people where you
Mhm.
were, what you feel, and why you were there.
Yeah. So Sunday I went down to Oklahoma City for the protest. And we marched. I want to say it was about a mile, 2 mile march down to the Capitol. And I mean, the whole way there were thousands of people lined up. I mean, it was an incredibly peaceful protest. Everyone had signs. I saw a few news crews set up, and I'm sure that got overshadowed by later in the night. But I mean, it was incredible. There were people of all ages, all races. They all had different messages, chanting together, and I mean, it was incredibly peaceful. One of the things that struck me the most was, I mean, like you're saying, like maybe, you know, as a white male, can't comment on like the black experience, but there were so many people there that I talked to. One girl in particular who said, like she was white, probably like in her early 20s, and she was like, I'm here because I'm an ally and I feel safe enough to come to this protest, and so I want to protest for people who don't feel safe enough to like come out and stand up for their rights. So I mean, there's so much power in standing together as like one force, like not dividing by race or anything like that, but coming together to like demand change. And so I mean, it was a very, very powerful and moving Sunday.
When you first heard or first saw the video of what happened to Mr. Floyd, what crosses through your mind as a young black woman?
It's so hard because part of you is just absolutely like shocked and revolted that a human could treat another human like that on the streets of the United States. Like in the public, people are recording. That is, how leadership and like authority in this country is treating, its most marginalized people. And so part of me is absolutely shocked that it's happening. And the other part of me is just so sad because you see it so often. George Floyd, I really think he was like the tipping point of this. I mean, he absolutely was. But so much of the anger and the rage that we're seeing in the streets of America and in the entire world really. There's protests going on like Amsterdam and all these different places, but I mean, he was really just the tip of the iceberg, like that final straw that broke the camel's back, because this has happened so many times before. I mean, you see it multiple times every year where, a black person is in the street with, a toy gun and is shot, or there's a rumor that, whatever happened. You can think of so many stories. And so it's appalling and shocking, but at the same time, it's just, you're so tired and sad of seeing it over and over. But that's, I think, why the protests are so violent right now. Like, there's just so much anger that has built up to this point.
When you look at everything that's going on, you were part of a, like you said, a very peaceful protest, one that
Yeah.
I think, just from talking to you yesterday, I could hear
Mhm.
in your voice, you felt what you did Sunday had meaning, that it was
Mhm.
important. But then without prompting, you kind of crossed into what happened in the evening, and
Mhm.
after 10 o'clock, even approaching midnight in Oklahoma City, and that
Yeah.
that that may have taken away from. But then again, you said the same thing you just said now. Some of what's happening there, I truly believe, I agree, truly believe, was protest.
Mhm.
That it was the anger side of it, being coming out. But then you see other things too, and you,
Yeah,
you said this
absolutely.
to me yesterday. There are
Mhm.
some things going on that have nothing to do with this. They're people
Mhm.
taking advantage of the situation. Balance that for me if you can.
Yeah, so I mean, it was quite like, I mean, the biggest juxtaposition ever going out there. I mean, in the morning, afternoon on Sunday, and just being with, I went out with probably a group of like 10 college students from OSU. And so we were all out there together, very peaceful. Like we felt like we had taken a stand for what we believed in. Saw a lot of our other friends there. And then, we head out around 6 o'clock. We've been there for 4 or so hours protesting, get dinner, we head home, and then you see on the news, what's going on now. And I think uh, my understanding, and even Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, I mean, he commented a lot with Minneapolis that at night, I think that there is a different crowd that comes out than the one that was there in the day. And maybe there's some overlap, but I think that the crowd is kind of split into two groups. And you've got one group that is um, angry, and they support Black Lives Matter, and they want to see change, and they recognize that, like, there have been thousands of peaceful protests in America that have resulted in no change. And then you have protests like Rodney King, where it's like, now America's attention, like, you have it. And maybe a discussion can actually be had. And so it's like there's those people that are so angry and like ready for change that they are, resulting to violence. And whether or not that's, the right or wrong move, I mean, that's just where our society is at. They feel so marginalized and unheard. But then you've got the other half of it, where it's, and like in Minneapolis, Tim Walz, the governor, said a lot of the people that are coming into these riots at night are not from Minneapolis. Like, these are people who are capitalizing on an opportunity to loot and to, do illegal things in the streets because there's protests going on, and they're more likely to get away with it. I think you see that too in Oklahoma City, when you do have people who are genuinely protesting, but they're outshined, and like their voices are taken away by the people that are showing up just to rob Dolce and Gabbana and be angry. And so it's a really hard balance right there, because it does outshine the peaceful protest and kind of outshine the movement.
You're young, and you've got a lot of life to live. You've got your post collegiate life to live. I
Mhm.
don't know. I don't know whether you'll take your journalism degree and use that. I don't know uh, what your goals are from a career standpoint. But I want to ask this question: being
Mhm.
the age you are, having seen what you've seen, and I'll be honest. My generation, generations before me, and obviously some generations that have come after me that have had their opportunity to invoke change, haven't invoked enough change, haven't gotten the job done enough, because, like you said, we still see such situations like this repeatedly happen in our country and
Mhm.
repeatedly happen to primarily black males. I'm one that believes that there is some injustice for everybody out there. I think it happens to a lot of people,
Mhm.
but there's no doubt that black males have suffered more tragedy and tragic deaths at the hands of people in authority than any other demographic.
Mhm.
So here's my question: can you change it? Do you, in your heart of hearts and your mind, looking ahead, do you feel, look, we there's a possibility of stopping the cycle and getting this changed?
I I truly believe there is, and I do not think that change comes easy. I don't think it's done overnight. I don't think this country will be different tomorrow or this next week after these protests happen. It takes a long time, and honestly, a lot of it just goes with, like you're saying, generations. Because and I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but so much depends on where you were raised, who you were raised by, their beliefs, whether or not like whatever's going on there. It just so much of that needs it just matures, and as new generations are coming in with uh, I mean, kind of a lot more like open perspectives. And this one of the biggest things for me is, and like my generation, I know is the world is so connected. I know like know this working in media, but you get on Twitter and I mean, you can talk to people in other countries. I mean, in an instant, and you see it on Instagram, you see it on, I mean, everything. YouTube, you follow YouTubers that are from, London or wherever it may be. And so the whole world is so interconnected that it's kind of hard to stay within your bubble. And I think that ability to reach out and talk to people of other demographics, socioeconomic backgrounds, and to even get on Twitter and see like this. I just watched a black man at this riot, get dragged out of his car and beaten by the police while a white woman was sitting in her car directly in front of him. Like I saw that on Twitter. And it's hard not to have empathy in situations like that when you can see it and you can talk to these people. So I think that the interconnectivity of the world will hopefully bring more empathy. And I mean, I really believe that change can happen, but I do not think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to take a lot of time. And right now, there's a lot going on with bureaucracy. It's just like politics and in general making change, like legal change in America. It takes a lot of time, but I do think it can happen. And I mean, we've seen progress in the short history of the United States, so I don't know why it would stop now.
I think it's good that you see a light out there that can be obtained. I wanted to ask you this too because this is where I come from with race. My
Hmm.
first introduction to people that were different from me was through sports.
Hmm.
I told you the story. I was part of the first group in junior high in the Dallas Independent School District where schools were desegregated. And my first day
Hmm.
of junior high, I was going to school in a school that was, you know, uh, almost 50-50 as far as black and white.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a big change. But because I played football, because I was in sports, they even had switched up the coaching staff where you had the same number of black coaches as white. And
It's
but to
big.
me, whether it was a coach or a player, it didn't matter. I mean, we were all
Hmm.
wearing the same color, gold. That was our
Hmm.
color, and that's the beauty of sports. Your dad, and I know you're proud of your dad. Your dad's been involved in
Absolutely.
sports his
Hmm.
entire life as a coach. I'll just say this: you know, Casey Dunn is one of the good guys. He's a guy that stands for the right things, and it's no surprise to me that his daughters have turned out the way they are, and you got a pretty special mom as well.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to
Thank
ask
you.
you this. I told you I saw something from Eamon Bamiga on Twitter
Hmm.
that again comes from the sports, from the sports background. So
Hmm.
I definitely embraced it. I'm like, hey, Eamon, amen, Eamon. I mean, I
Yeah.
love that, and I actually did a story on his post.
Hmm.
I saw
Yeah, I
some of
read
the
it this morning.
posts. Yeah, I saw some of the posts from Spencer Sanders. Being the daughter of a coach, how much can sports be part of the answer? And in fairness, we've had sports a long time, and kids like me growing up, have learned to work with kids of different colors, different backgrounds through sports. And I'd like to say by now sports would have helped solve this, but it just seems like it's that one area where
Mhm.
things are better, but it hasn't necessarily pushed it into all the other areas. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm sure you can imagine, but sports and football in particular has, been a huge metaphor in my life growing up, just about and just example about teamwork and responsibility and not giving up and fundamental hope and things like that. I mean, since I was a child, you know, I'd get in trouble in high school and dad would have me running stadium stairs at Boone Pickens at 6 a.m. But I think sports is incredible in the aspect that it brings people of different socioeconomic backgrounds, of different races, religions, whatever it may be. I mean, different regions, even of the United States. When you look at Oklahoma State's football team, like you're talking about, Eamon is, from Canada and originally Nigeria, and he's here in Stillwater, Oklahoma, wearing orange with everyone else that's here. So I think that and he talked about that in his post too on Twitter, but there's a lot of camaraderie that comes with sports. And I think it's an incredible thing to have, people come together with the same goal in mind and the same path to get there. And there's no one that's being, given a step up because they have more money than, it's just everyone is working together as a team. And I think that provides a lot of, you know, solidarity and unity for a group. And I think it's helped. I mean, even in your case, talking about, the desegregation of schools and then having, African American like football players on your team and working with you, and you created relationships with these people and had new friends, and it gives you a perspective, and this is for everyone. Like it changes your opinion of people when you actually have a friend that fits the box that maybe you're putting an entire race in. And so I think it's important to have that. And I think football and all sports really provide it. But I think the problem right now, and it's just, I mean, it's changed in general. But I mean, you can even see it with, the kneeling. When Kaepernick takes a knee and the nation is upset, to say the least, that, he would take a knee during the national anthem. And a lot of these people that are upset, you understand because they have, maybe a dad or a brother or sister or whoever in the military, and they want them to be honored, and they are proud of the United States. And so you don't think you should, disrespect it in that way on national television. But at the same time, he's coming from a background where he gets on national television and sees, a black brother shot in the streets for walking. And so that's his reality in America. And that's what he is taking a peaceful knee, right, to protest. And so when you look at something in sports and see, that kind of, juxtaposition between where those two people are coming from, because the goal isn't the same in that situation. They're not both trying to win a football game. You're talking about different backgrounds and different paradigms, and where they're going in the future. And I think that kind of clash, it still definitely exists in football, just like it exists anywhere in the U.S. But I think that absolutely sports helps, because it provides that empathy. But I mean, just like with policy and everything, I think we have a long ways to go before the experience for both sides can really be understood.
No, I would agree, and I tell you, we could talk all day. I mean, folks,
Yeah,
you can tell
absolutely.
this is a very bright, incredibly, you know, intelligent young lady that's fun to talk to. I like to hear from the voice of the future, and I think Kayla's definitely one of those. Along the lines of Kaepernick, and I got to admit, the first time I
Mhm.
saw Colin Kaepernick kneel during the national anthem, I wasn't happy. But
Mhm.
the more I talk to people, you'll find this amazing. The people that were most in agreement and defended his right to kneel were
Mhm.
people who I knew who had been in the military. Those
Mhm.
were the people that first said, No, it's exactly what I fought for. Was for him to
Yeah,
have the right to kneel, and it's amazing they're the people who defend him more than other facets. I thought that was
yeah.
interesting.
Which yeah, that's incredible. Like just to come together like that and recognize, what you're fighting for, and Kaepernick's right to do that, and that's what we need. We need people to say, don't get mad about this for me. Like I respect and I support what this man's doing. You know, and so we
Yeah.
absolutely need that. And I know that there's a lot of people across different lines that feel different ways about that. But when we're talking about these protests going on and people are saying, I mean, even you're seeing tweets that are like, if they're looting, we're shooting, and you're talking about these violent protests and how violent, or just, you'll see it on the news, where people are like, violent protests, they're not going to create change. Like, we're going to disregard the violence. But then you look at a peaceful protest, like what Kaepernick did when he took a knee, and I mean, it's the same. So
Sparks a lot of
you,
thought.
yeah, it's kind of like what do you want us to do? Where do you go if peaceful protests are taken off the table and violent protests are taken off the table? You know, there's just anger there, and I think that's really what we're seeing is people that are just furious, and it's
Kayla,
really upsetting.
Kayla, we got to
Mhm.
go. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I love hearing your viewpoint. Keep speaking it. Keep going to protest. Keep trying to change the things you feel needed to be changed. uh, yeah, it's encouraging to know that there are young people, and I think there's a lot of young people. I don't want to make it sound like Kayla's.
Oh yeah.
I'm encouraged when I know that
Mhm.
there's some leadership in our future,
Absolutely.
like you. So
And
appreciate your
thank you so
time.
much for having me on and sharing your platform to talk about issues like this because they need to be.
I
So,
appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
thank you so much. It was good talking to you.
All right, Kayla Dunn.